All right, while we've talked about the apparent discord between ACT and New Zealand First as they prepare for an election in less than a year's time, there have been rumblings within the Beltway and discussions in Wellington that the two major parties, Labour and National, might want to form a consensus on some basic policies in New Zealand to prevent the yo-yoing, the seesawing, the pendulum swing in a number of policy areas that many believe is damaging to the growth and stability of New Zealand, particularly in an economic sense. This view for some, if you like, baselines about policy and how we run our country. One of the groups that is pushing for it is Business New Zealand, the largest business lobby group in New Zealand. Its Director of Advocacy is Catherine Beard, and she joins us on the phone now. Catherine, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Do you think, and look, MMP's an interesting thing, the two big dominant parties, Labour or National, it's not quite the way it used to be, but they still do dominate. Are they the parties that Business New Zealand, and before we get on to the specifics, are those the parties you think that need to have some agreement on base policies around things like infrastructure?
Yeah, look, we think so. And there are areas where they don't contest policy and they tend to be quite successful and stable. So the way we treat trade is one of them, sort of free trade, open borders, that kind of thing. So, yeah, absolutely, because if they are focused on the near term and what do I need to do to get elected, then we're not sorting out any of these problems that are coming down the track. And actually, they're not that far down the track. We're only talking 20 years away, where we've got some big problems to solve. So they need to be solving them now because they're not problems you can solve abruptly.
Okay, so you're talking about manufacturing a kind of policy consensus in some areas. And of course, the nature of politics doesn't, and particularly politics in the age of social media, is not kind of designed for everyone to be reasonable with each other, is it?
No, it's not. But I think we've got some green shoots of areas that they're not going to necessarily arm wrestle over so much. And I would give you infrastructure as an example. And that's been well supported by the Infrastructure Commission. So setting up an independent body that looks at all the cost benefit, looks at all the potential projects, actually has a proper, factual, lots of data about, what stacks up, what order they should be done in. And I think, Australia's done that and infrastructure's not politicised over there.
Yeah, but then we have, no matter how you do that, let's look at the cycle bridge on the way between Wellington and Melling, the way between Wellington and the Lower Hutt. Just this week, Chris Bishop accused of approving that project because it was in his electorate, even though it didn't meet the cost-benefit analysis. Already great debate over a second Mount Vic tunnel again. You can talk a good game on infrastructure, Catherine, but often it doesn't survive the reality of political contests.
No, and look, I think this is why we've put this report together, really. And, we did a survey of our members and political flip-flopping was the number one concern they have. Because for business to invest, particularly in things like infrastructure, which are intergenerational investments, they need the confidence that they're going to have the political backing to do it. So what we're hoping is that our big businesses start to speak out on it. Business New Zealand has 70 industry groups associated with us, and they're all very keen on this framework. So I think we've just got to keep calling the politicians out when they do something that just looks like petty politics, frankly.
At the expense of the country and the country's economy. Okay, what apart from infrastructure, and I'll throw one at you if you're concerned about this, mining and mineral businesses. We've got Shane Jones desperately trying to get more people mining and prospecting in this country. We've got the other side of the political spectrum saying we would just turn that around as soon as we got in.
Yeah, absolutely. The world needs minerals for all of the smart tech that we're doing. New Zealand desperately needs high-paying jobs, we either use the resources we've got, and we have to remember we've got a massive country. We've got a country the size of the United Kingdom with a population the size of Sydney, so there's no shortage of land in New Zealand if we've got some of these riches and resources, and that can help us become again a first world country, and then you've got some way of paying for your retirement and your health and your aging population. But immigration's another one. We're talking about how big does New Zealand excuse me, how big does New Zealand want to be? And if you wanted to grow into a more significant sized country with better scale and better opportunities, you'd sort of need to agree on that, because immigration needs the infrastructure built around it.
Okay, well, what I'm hearing, Catherine, I kind of, in theory, agree with everything that business in New Zealand is staying here, but I mean, try and get, if Winston Peters is the kingmaker, try and get him to agree to an immigration policy that he hasn't been part of or doesn't agree with, right?
Yeah, well, this is right, but part of what I think we need to be doing as advocates is talking to the population and the public and de-risking some of this in people's minds, because politicians only, they're only reflecting the view of their voters.
Yeah.
So, let's have a debate about it.
Yeah. I also think in a more specifically political sense, Catherine, the possibility of a grand coalition between Labour and National, this is the sort of idea that leads to that. And in most MMP democracies, that happens eventually. The whole landscape changes. And I'm just saying, if National and Labour, as the two dominant political parties for so long and the two largest political parties, were to agree on areas like immigration and prospecting and everything, they'd be closer together than anyone else. There'd be a sitter to form some sort of grand coalition government.
Yes, you would think so. From the discussions and the panel discussions I've sat in on recently, they're still very much doing their own brands. But ironically, they want similar outcomes. They just see a different way of achieving those outcomes. So, and again, we would completely endorse the Ministry for Regulation, because we want smart regulation and we want regulation that delivers what it says on the tin. So, and again, they're saying that they would reverse that. That.
Well, Winston's saying he'd reverse it.
I think Labour are not very keen on it.
No, either. No, and suddenly we've got Labour and New Zealand First together on an issue. That's weird, isn't it?
Well, it is.
Okay. Let's give me a percentage chance that your nirvana, your utopia of cross-party agreement that prevents wasting money, political flip-flops, and grows this country in a positive way. Give me an out 100%, Catherine, that you've achieved this in your lifetime.
This is a campaign. It's not going to be one in one day with one report, and we're not going to stop advocating for it. And I think you will hear lots of voices in the business ecosystem coming from different angles, whether it's Infrastructure New Zealand or, all of the industry groups, civil contractors. There's a whole lot of them that have been really hurt by these.
This is a slightly more sophisticated approach to lobbying than maybe before, which was always who's the government, and I don't want to be blunt about it, but let's crawl up their foo-foo valve and get what we want out of them, and then when the government changes, you're nice to the other guys. This is kind of a more nuanced or a more ambitious way to lobby, to say, let's just agree with the things we agree on and get you guys to agree with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really putting a flag up the pole to say, look, this stuff is happening, the population will be shrinking. We do need immigrants. We can either just do it in a blindfolded way that's not very thoughtful, or we can actually plan for it and it works.
Or we could say, Catherine, we're about the right size. Let's just maintain what we've got and be a nice little country down the bottom of the South Pacific.
Well, we could, but Australia will continue to grow, and our biggest competition for talent and our young people.
Well, we won't need all that talent if we don't want to grow. We'll just stay at 5 million people. We'll flog stuff to a growing Australian market at ever higher prices. You see, that's the thing when you get down to it. There are other big, more fundamental questions, and I'm sure the Greens would say, I'm sure the Green Party would say, we don't need to grow.
Well, the problem you're going to have, though, is you're going to have one taxpayer supporting 4 or 5 retired people.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work.
Yeah. We've just got to have more kids. What do you make, while I've got you there, you mentioned the regulatory standards bill. You think Business New Zealand thinks it should stay and it's a good thing?
Absolutely. We've got people on our economists on our staff that have been advocating for this sort of regulation for 30 years.
Yeah. Catherine, I thank you very much for your time. I want to keep an eye on this, and I think it is a much sort of bigger picture and idea than most people get yet. Good luck with it. And a lot of texts, by the way, are saying that people get what you're saying completely. I thank you for your time.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Catherine Beard, Director of Advocacy at Business New Zealand.